Hello and welcome to Read Brave, a comics podcast from the Graphomania Podcast Network. I'm Vinton Bain.
I'm Cory Casto.
And I'm Scout Casto.
So we've had an amazing year for comic books this
Yes.
2016. There's been a lot of bad things. Of course, people are talking about how 2016 was horrible, but for comic books, I think that we did very good this year.
We got a lot of good content. There were a lot of improvements made. I'm happy about what came out in 2016.
I feel like a lot of it, too, has been just in the last 2 or 3 months. Some of my favorite things came out in the last couple months, too.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year.
Well, before we dive into talking about this year in comic books, Cory, what have you been reading over this Christmas break?
Well, I got all the way caught up on Old Man Logan.
Oh, nice. I still need to do that.
Vampire Logan. And
I don't know what that is, but now I'm intrigued.
Well, now now you have to read it. It's a good storyline. I really enjoyed it. I had not previously read the pre-Secret Wars Old Man Logan storyline. So I started with it, reread the post-Secret Wars Old Man Logan storyline, and got all the way caught up. And it's a really great story. I really enjoyed it a lot. There were 4 issues that I've read recently, though, that made me a little bit more excited than other things I'd read, and I think they're all number ones. First thing that I wanted to talk about was the Hawkeye number 1, Marvel Now, with
finally,
Kate Bishop.
When we opened this podcast talking about how we were hoping and wishing that this would happen, and it's happened.
It happened. Our podcast made it happen.
Yes.
I'm claiming it right now.
We put it out there, and now it happened.
So we have Kate Bishop as Hawkeye, and she's in California as a detective, much like the LA Woman story arc went in the Matt Fraction Hawkeye.
Except she didn't steal Lucky this time.
That's right, yeah. Kelly Thompson is writing. She's known for writing A-Force and Jim and the Holograms.
Yeah.
Leonardo Romero is the artist, and he's done some work on Batman 66 and Doctor Strange with Jason Aaron. And then Jordi Belair is the colorist, and it's been my experience reading, I think that I feel like I've read a lot more comics this year than I have in the past, even though I enjoyed reading comics to begin with. Sure. I really wanted to be more current, have more to say, have just better insight into the world of comics. And I felt like more often than not, when I would look to see who the colorist was, it was Jordi Belair. She's worked on just tons of stuff, especially at Marvel. She worked on Pretty Deadly for Image and Manhattan Projects for Image. She's also done coloring for Moon Knight, and she won a Eisner Award for Best Coloring in 2014. And in early 2013, Jordi Belair posted to Tumblr that in a open letter titled "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore," where she talked about how important the colorist is, but they are given little recognition. She said, "Colorists are the unknown, amazing backup singer that makes every track awesome." So fans declared January 24th to be Colorist Appreciation Day. So that's coming up soon, everyone should pay attention to who colors the comic books that you read, because it is important.
Definitely.
But anyway, to get back to Hawkeye, it's kind of a detective story. Probably my favorite thing about the issue was the first page, like the layout of the first page that gives you the backstory. It's the way it's laid out is an application for a license to become a private investigator. And there's an Alias Investigations business card on there and little notes to herself. And then her signature has an arrow at the end of it. It's just everything about it is so great.
It was so perfect.
Well, and then she wrote on there, I think she didn't actually get one, right? Because she decided
it was like
too much money.
$250.
She was like, no
forget
thanks. Which is a very Kate Bishop thing to do.
The second comic I wanted to talk about was, it's from Dark Horse, and it's called Ether.
I haven't heard of this.
I hadn't heard of it either. I picked it up at Empire Strikes. It was another comic that Brian at Empire
We're just gonna have
suggested to me.
start a segment where he comes on and suggests comics
Seriously.
that people should read.
So anyway, this is written by Matt Kent and illustrated by David Rubin. If you're not familiar with Matt Kent, he wrote Mind Management, and he's also worked on multiple titles for Valiant, including Unity and Ray. And David Rubin has worked with Paul Pope on several of the Battling Boy books.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that he worked with anybody else on those. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then he also wrote a Spanish comic called The Hero. So I kind of felt like the overall tone of this comic was grown-up Adventure Time.
That sounds perfect.
It's basically this guy who is a guy who's a scientist, and he is exploring this alternate universe, and there's this primate gatekeeper, and the way that he gets from one universe to another is by the primate beating him and kicking him to the other.
Well,
yeah.
That's an interesting take on it. I like that. That's something I haven't heard of before.
And so he's like solving mysteries in this other realm that are obvious to everyone else, but everyone in Ether, the name of the realm is Ether. Everyone in Ether is so focused on magic, everything being magic, that they don't see obvious things in front of them, like the causes. Something, an obvious cause. There's also a snail taxi, a taxi like made out of a snail, which was pretty interesting. And then an evil librarian. And working at a library, I think an evil librarian is pretty awesome.
We all encountered those in middle school.
So I'm really excited to dig into this series and see where it goes and read more in this next year. The third issue is another Dark Horse title. It's called Dead Inside, and it is a crime comic. It's about a investigator who's investigating a death in a prison, and like her job is just to investigate deaths in prisons. And she discovers there's a cover up, and everyone's like pushing information away from her and covering up all this evidence. And so I really enjoyed it. I mean, I like Ed Brubaker. I like crime comics anyway. And having it happen in a prison, I felt like was a new take that hadn't been done in comics, or at least not to my knowledge.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I haven't checked that one out either. I need to look into that.
It's written by John Arcudi, who has worked on BPRD, Lobster Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
And written some Hellboy with Mike Mignola.
That's awesome.
And then, I hope I say his name right, Tony Fajula, who worked on Lobster Johnson as well, and a comic called The Veil.
Well, if Tony's listening, we'd love to have you on to come correct us on how your name's pronounced and talk to us about comic books. Please hit us up.
And then the colorist is Andre May, and he's worked on The Spire and Six Gun Gorilla. I know that Six Gun Gorilla is one of Josh Unruh's favorite comics. And then the final comic that I wanted to mention was Gamora #1. Have you read this one, Vinton?
I haven't. I actually totally missed that this was coming out already.
It's written by Nicole Perlman, who was the co-writer of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie and is also co-writing the Captain Marvel movie. So I felt like she had the funds of knowledge required to write a Gamora title.
That's really interesting.
And it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it a lot. It's kind of a backstory about Gamora, how she became an assassin, and it all happens before, the storyline that we're familiar with in the movie.
I think every time we record, I end up reading at least one or two issues afterwards. That looks like that's going to be at least one of them.
Yeah. So, Scout, what did you read?
Well, I also read Marvel Now's Hawkeye, and I agree that the opening page, the title page, was pretty great, but I loved inside that everyone else kept asking for Clint Hawkeye, the one with the abs. Everyone wanted him instead of her.
There were so many
confused.
mentions of abs throughout the whole comic.
Yeah, Kate loves abs, and so it's perfect for her to be in California surrounded by surfers. Read the most recent saga, as I will say every time a new saga comes out. And
Man, I should have caught up on that on my Christmas
Yeah.
break. I failed.
it's okay.
Spring break's coming, right?
Yeah, it is coming soon.
That means nothing for an adult who works.
Yeah, exactly. But it was awesome. It continues to be amazing. I feel like this one was really emotional, and I have a lot of feelings towards Marco, but I'll always have those. So he just wants to be a peaceful man, and the world won't let him.
And after watching Rogue One, you fan casted.
Oh, I fan casted Diego Luna a long time ago. Don't even worry about it.
Corey, are you caught up on Saga?
I am caught up on Saga.
I'm going to need to get caught up on Saga, and we're just going to have to do a Saga segment where we talk about everything that's happened in Saga.
Yeah.
Because I'm so far behind now. I think Volume 4 was the last one I read. So.
There's a lot that's happened.
We all read so many comics this last year, and I feel like consistently Saga is the one that never lets me down. And that's with me. I read every issue when it comes out. I'm not waiting for trades or anything. It never lets me down. So, I also read Marvel Now's Hulk, #1 by Mariko Tamaki.
Yeah.
I know we all read it, and kind of a bummer though, because she's dealing with Bruce Banner's death, but definitely going to be fun to see what happens and where they go from that.
Yeah. I'm excited to see where they're going to take her from that point. I think it's a good starting point, and I hope that it gives us a dive into that character separated from Banner.
Mm-hmm.
It does provide a good separation, saying he's dead, this is over.
Right.
You see that aftermath where people are asking and wanting to know, how are you dealing with this? But she's moving on and she's trying to get past that, and she's dealing with her own problems, and we're getting to see more of her and who she is without that shadow being there.
Yeah, well, and I feel like too in the beginning of the issue, even without the shadow of being the Hulk, she's not She-Hulk right now. She's just an attorney trying to be a hero in a different way, because I imagine she's feeling so down by that quote unquote superhero community or what have you that let her down. But the idea of letting go of being She-Hulk and focusing on this other area of her life, I think will be interesting going forward. I
read Mariko Tamaki's book this one summer that she did with her sister, Gillen Tamaki, last year. And I feel like that they picked a really good author for a dramatic title that was focused more on the drama and the inner emotions and inner twinings or whatever of a superheroine. And I hope that what Vision did, or what Tom King did for Vision, that Mariko Tamaki will do for Hulk.
Yeah, I think she can do it. I definitely think so. But also, speaking of Mariko Tamaki, my favorite thing that I read during the break was book 1 of Supergirl being super.
That was so cool to me that we got 2 really good books from the same author in the same time period there.
And one from Marvel and one from DC too. And completely
really
different moods and tones.
Yeah.
While Hulk was kind of tough to get through, Supergirl, I loved from the very beginning. And it's interesting because I've never really been a huge Supergirl fan, but I'm super excited to read more. I feel like it brought in a really young feeling that a lot of young readers will enjoy. She had a lot of awesome feminist references. She talked about Kathy Switzer, who was the woman who ran the Boston Marathon in 1967. If you Google her, you'll see the most awesome picture that's pretty famous of her running in the marathon and a bunch of men trying to tackle her and take her down. So, and then Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which I'm pretty sure everyone knows who that is. And the Luna Chicks, who I didn't know anything about, but did some research on. So that was really fun. I'm so excited about these, and I think there are only going to be 4 of them, which bums me out. Yeah. And then I already know it's finite. It's going to have an end. So,
But we also only had 4 issues of Faith originally, and
that's true. So maybe people will love it enough that it'll keep going. And I knew it was going to be good because she said she was going to pull a lot of inspiration from Lumberjanes, which I think that she did. She kind of captured the feel of being a teenage girl.
Yeah.
So
well, when I read it, I thought it was a really good look at kind of what Spider-Man brought to teenage boys back in the 60s, where you would now have a superhero who was just like you and dealt with your problems, but it actually is one for a teenage girl now, where girls can look at her and say, these are the problems I deal with. This is exactly what it's like when I go to school. This is exactly what it's like when I get a pimple. This is exactly what it's like dealing with my dad and my mom and my friends and trying to juggle life, even though I can't fly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the thing. I'm super excited for more Hawkeye, but I think this Supergirl title is what I'm going to be looking forward to coming out every other month for the next year. Vinton, what about you?
So over Christmas break, I read 56 issues of Star Wars comics.
Holy cow.
Overachiever. No.
Because I watched Rogue One and couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I loved Rogue One and just kept wanting to go deeper into that mythos. And I knew that Marvel and Disney were in cooperation to, of course, Marvel being owned by Disney, to continue the canon of Star Wars in their multiverse and continue on those stories as a wider universe. And I was just really interested to see what they were doing with that. And of course, we've had a couple of years now of the comics coming out that I had needed to catch up on. So I started out with Shattered Empire and wasn't too impressed. It wasn't a bad comic. It was definitely good, but it was just kind of weird vignettes, kind of teasing some things from Force Awakens, but not really taking it anywhere. Just, oh, here's this thing. It's like some fan service, but not actually doing anything with it. But then I started reading Star Wars, which is done by Jason Aaron. And I love Jason Aaron and the things he's done for Marvel and of course some of his own things as well. And it was really good. It was really fun to see it's all set in the timeline between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So you get to see some of that gap in between and how Luke's dealing with, he's a Jedi, but he doesn't have any training. And Leia's trying to bring the rebellion to a front. And Darth Vader's trying to track them down and finding out whether Luke is his son or not, because they don't really address that in the movie. So they're addressing it here in the comics, how Darth Vader came to that. And it was really interesting to follow that on the Star Wars side, but then I read that they were going to intertwine it with Darth Vader through a crossover event called Vader Down. And I was like, well, I guess I got to catch up on the Darth Vader comics too. So I started reading those as well. And Kieron Gillen does the Darth Vader comics, and they are fantastic. If you want to read the Star Wars comic, read Darth Vader. It's 25 issues, and then they ended it, I think, one annual. Of course, Kieron Gillen's coming back with a spin-off off of that, Dr. Aphra, a character that was introduced there that was helping out Darth Vader that became a runaway hit. So we'll see what happens with that. The first issue just came out and I haven't started it yet. The Star Wars series is still continuing. They did a second annual, and then issue 26 just came out this week. So still more going with that. I'm interested to follow up on it, but it's really good. I'm really excited to see the Star Wars universe expanded through comics and comic creators and what they're going to do with that. Aside from that, I read the things that we've already mentioned that I read. Cory, you suggested that I read the Gwenpool holiday special, which was fantastic.
It was my favorite, maybe my favorite holiday special I've ever read. Like, I was laughing out loud every other page.
The idea of Galactus being Santa Claus,
yes,
so fantastic. If I didn't even know if I'd like Gwenpool. I still haven't read many Gwenpool things. It seemed kind of like a cash grab type thing.
Yeah.
Cory, I know you've said some good things about it though. And this really convinced me that I need to read some more of that because it was a lot of fun. So if you don't think you would like Gwenpool, I still insist that you check this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Frank Castle in tiny shorts was the best moment.
I like the little skull on the booty shorts.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they have what was the holiday? The Thanksgiving holiday? It was like Pantsgiving.
Pantsgiving. Yeah, where you give your friends tiny pants to wear.
Yeah.
That's right. I continued on all my normal Marvel stuff, Spider-Man, all new X-Men, lots of good stuff coming out from there. Of course, that's Amazing Spider-Man and the Miles Morales Spider-Man. Kamala Khan is still doing some amazing stuff, both on Champions and on Miss Marvel. One of the books I read that wasn't a Marvel book was Rock Stars, and that was an interesting title where it's kind of a mystery set in the heart of classic rock fandom with like Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, and these things, and taking a lot of those stories and the mythologies behind those bands and the things that may or may not have happened depending on the biography that you're reading or the internet rumors that you believe, and weaving a story of this detective to go through who's a rock and roll detective, quote unquote. It seemed a little cheesy when I first picked it up, but I actually got into it and I'm interested to see where an issue 2 might take it.
Interesting.
Of course, continuing Young Animal stories, we had Cave Carson and a second issue of
Mother Panic.
The Cave Carson's still going good. It's kind of becoming a slow burn to me. It's going a little slow right now. Mother Panic. What did you guys read Mother Panic, right?
It was hard to
bummer.
read.
Yeah. So we'll leave.
Well written. The art is fantastic, but the subject matter was very difficult to do.
The
with.
idea that the same woman that wrote that writes Faith just blows my mind because they're so
two different.
I mean,
comics.
not that a writer isn't capable of writing two different things, but it's just so completely different, night and day.
I am really enjoying Iron Man with Riri Williams. I still don't know how to pronounce it because I haven't heard anyone say it, but. Really enjoying that. The idea that Tony Stark downloaded himself into an AI for her before he died. And so he's there helping her and teaching her. And on the flip side of that, we have the Iron Man series going on with Doctor Doom, where he's become Iron Man and he's doing his own thing and kind of a redemption story. And also tying it back into Secret Wars, which I really enjoy the comics that they're doing that and acting like that was a thing that happened, even though most characters don't remember it. He is one that would. And so it's playing a lot off of that. And I'm really interested to see where that goes. Occupy Avengers, this issue wasn't quite as good as the last. It was okay. I'm still interested to see where it goes. We'll see if I hold on to that or not. Great Lake Avengers, like you mentioned, Corey, it's still really fun. Ghost Rider had its issue too, but it also had a digital special.
Digital and like a Christmas annual or something.
Yeah, which I forgot to read. But
Ghostface Killer.
Is it Ghostface Killer? I thought it was
Method Man. You're right. Method Man.
Yeah.
Written by the Wu-Tang collectively. Just say Wu-Tang and then that covers like 50 different rappers.
But it was written by Method Man, Christmas special, and I totally forgot to read it. And I just realized that when I was looking to see that I read Ghost Rider issue 2, which was still just as good as issue 1. I'm really interested in that. They're doing a lot of more interactivity with Amadeus Cho and Laura Kinney Wolverine. Really interested to see how they're going to tie all that together. It's fantastic, but I need to get back to that digital special.
Yeah.
That should have been on my list of things to read. Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur, still fantastic. Loving to see where she's going, and she is kind of coming into her own now. You got to see this past issue, her standing up to both the Thing and Amadeus Cho's Hulk, trying to guide her and mentor her. And she's like, guys, I don't need you, and you're causing a lot of trouble here. And they were basically tearing up the town, fighting over her. And she's like, listen, I'm the only one acting like an adult here. And I really like that about her because it was about time that she stepped into that maturity that her intelligence would bring. Of course, I read Hulk. That was fantastic. Supergirl, both of those fantastic. I can't believe that the same author just released 2 amazing titles for me at the same time. I was so stoked by that. We also got the finishing touches on Civil War 2. I'm so glad it's over.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So glad it's over. It should not have been stretched on as long as it did. They should have made that a bit more concise. Don't know if it even should have happened, but you have it. There's still good things. But I will say that this last issue was probably the best issue of that event. It was a really good wrap up on it. Glad it's over. Continuing forward now. Love to see more of the things that are coming out of it. Of course, Riri Williams, more Miles Morales. And I need to get back into Captain Marvel's series because I realized I kind of fell off of that in mid Civil War II. And so I'd be interested to know where she's going to go from here.
Right.
So I want to see more of that. But that's what I read.
That was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. Merry Christmas. I read a lot. So now I think we want to do a small hostful segment where we just talk about a year in review of comics. I'm mentioning some of our favorite things that happened or just interesting things that happened. What do you guys think? What were some of your favorite titles this year?
Some of my favorite, well, basically like everything on Young Animal. I was so excited that
we were I mean, go back and listen to that episode. We were so stoked about Young Animal coming out, and it is paid off.
Definitely. Like you said, Cave Carson is kind of a slow burn. It seems like it might be better read as a trade paperback, but I still enjoy it. I still like it. Doom Patrol just blew my mind.
Yeah, and so sad that it got delayed, but I'd much rather it be delayed and keep quality than be rushed and lose quality.
Yeah. And sent me back to reading the Grant Morrison Doom Patrol, which I absolutely love, and probably on my top 3 list of favorite things I've read this year.
Yeah, we got some things in the works talking about Doom Patrol a little bit more, maybe.
The Moon Knight series that came out, written by Jeff Lemire, was just like the Vision series, just out of left field, I felt like, and did things that were really different that I had not seen in comics before. and were really exciting. And then, of course, we were talking about before we started recording that, Paper Girls, the first trade paperback came out in this last year, 2016.
Yeah, at the beginning of 2016. The first, I think, 4 issues came out in 2015, but the first volume was released in 2016, collected.
And I'm so happy with it. But, anything that is written by Brian K. Vaughan is going to be an awesome book.
You didn't mention Vision, so I will.
Okay.
I think Vision was definitely one of my favorite things to come out this year. I didn't know hardly anything about Vision. I mean, I really only knew what Age of Ultron showed me, which is kind of shameful because I feel like it wasn't, I think that Civil War did a better job of creating a more well-rounded character, which isn't surprising because I love the Russo brothers. So, but yeah, the Vision series I'm sad it's over, but I'm also glad it's over. I'm glad that they didn't drag it too far so that it lost its quality and the things I loved about it.
Well, such a heartbreaking series.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just felt completely different from anything Marvel did throughout the entire year. Huck was something I feel like a lot of people didn't read that I think doesn't get the praise that it deserves.
Definitely.
So well written, beautifully illustrated and colored, heart-wrenching for sure. But one of the favorite things I read this year that just kind of we picked up that because it looked interesting and we knew it would probably be good because Image put out. So I think more people should be checking that out for sure. And
surprising to me too, because I don't always like what Mark Miller does and his tone on things, but it was a lot different than a normal Mark Miller book.
Yeah. So, and it had there were so many things I liked about it. Yeah. Faith, I feel like even though it's continuing and she was a creator that existed previously, I feel like this is the first time that she was given a story of her own and was allowed to just be her.
Yeah. And it was fantastic, that miniseries. I still haven't started the ongoing, which I don't
either,
know why. I was
awful.
so excited about it, but I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the only tricky thing with comics, especially when we try to read single issues to keep up on stuff, is something's going to fall to the side that we're going to have to pick up later.
So many comics.
Exactly. Yeah. So Faith was definitely one of my favorite things that happened this year. Yeah, I mean, absolutely a great year for comics. So many things came out that were fantastic, that had women involved. Tons of diversity from every publisher, I feel like. It was a good year, definitely.
Well, as for me, I'd first like to give a big shout out to Black Mask Studios, who's doing a lot of good things this year.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I'm just really looking forward to next year, what they're going to continue to do then. I haven't read a lot of what they've put out, but the things I have read were just so amazing that I'm just really happy with them as a publisher, as a company, and what they're doing. So I'm really stoked that there's someone else out there other than Image Comics that's doing something new and inventive and really pushing the boundaries on what we expect from comics as far as like diversity and seeing different race and gender and all these different things that you don't expect from the normal comics that you get. That being said, my favorite titles, I think, of the year were probably Champions, definitely. I was so excited about it. It's been paying off for me for sure. Those characters in that comic, I just love them so much. Doom Patrol, obviously we talk a lot about it, but yeah, Doom Patrol is a runaway success. I cannot wait to read more Doom Patrol every time an issue comes out. I get so excited. And then Vision, like we've already talked about it, but Vision was so good. It was not what you expect from Marvel at all. And I just cannot recommend that you pick up Vision enough. I think each of us recommended on a different episode that you read Vision. And I think one of us even recommended it again later. And just because it's that good, guys. It's Rinchy's good. It is.
It's so good because it's not a superhero comic.
Yeah, it's not.
It's this weird philosophical mind-bending thing. I don't know. It's exactly what I needed is what it was.
It's the perfect comic to give to someone when they say, I don't like superheroes.
Yeah.
To prove that there is good writing in superhero comics.
When people say that, I want to give them Matt Fraction's Hawkeye, and then I'd want to give them this Vision run.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, too, it was really timely. It dealt with not treating people who are different as outcasts, because they were androids.
They weren't accepted.
Right. They weren't accepted by society, by their neighbors. the kids had trouble at school, just
Yeah.
like every kid who's different has trouble at school. So it felt like it was important for the time that we're in.
Definitely. And I was talking about Black Mass Studios really having this diversity. I'm really proud of Marvel Comics and what they've been doing with diversity as well. I know they still have their problems. There's a lot of comics. Depends on who's writing and who's doing what, but they've really stepped up their game. I mean, we got Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur going on, and she's now the smartest character in the Marvel Universe, and I think they're really doing a lot with that, like I said just earlier. And Ryrie Williams, new Iron Man, I'm really excited about that. Of course, continuing Kamala Khan, Miles Morales, Amadeus Cho, and Laura Kinney is now Wolverine and doing a great job. Those all new Wolverine issues have been some of my favorite things that have come out this year. Just really great stuff. Really glad that they're mixing things up and allowing some things to change. I've been reading the Marvel Untold Story biography, and it was interesting to see how much Marvel was against things changing throughout the first couple of decades because they wanted like movie rights and TV show things. And they thought if they change things in the comics, well, then the TV shows can't keep up and they won't be related anymore if you change things or this character dies or something happens. So they wanted to keep everything the same and just tell stories that didn't change anything. And I'm so glad that's not what we get with comics today, that we are seeing growth and evolution in our comics and change. And if it wasn't for that growth and evolution and change, we would just get stagnant and then we would get sick of them. And I know there's a lot of people that complain about the change in comics. Like, this isn't the Captain America I grew up with. This isn't the Spider-Man I grew up with. Well, the Spider-Man you grew up with wasn't the Spider-Man that your dad grew up with. And
right.
I mean, of course, if you're old enough, I can't really say that, but things change. Every generation has their own and it has to have a new way of looking at it to relate to them. That's the point. Let each new generation have its own thing. And I think Marvel Comics is doing a good job of that. And I would like to apologize that we're not more DC fans. So we had Rebirth this year, and I've heard a lot of good things about a lot of it, some bad things about a few titles. Yeah. Of course, we just talked about Supergirl being fantastic, but if you're listening to this and you're a big DC fan, hit me up because I want to have a conversation with you maybe on the podcast about DC Comics and the things they're doing, because I do think they're doing great things, and we just need people that read more of them to be involved with that.
I did read some of the Flash Rebirth, which was great. I should have mentioned the Batgirl Rebirth being written by Hope Larson. That was definitely a highlight for me this year. It's so much fun to read through, and I know our kids have been reading some of the DC Rebirth, like the Blue Beetle titles and stuff. So but that's something we definitely need to get into even more as time goes on. Yeah, I think that Marvel also, not just in their characters, but also as far as creative teams, has gotten more diverse this year. We had our first Black woman writing a title, Roxane Gay writing the Black Panther spinoff, which was a huge win. I couldn't believe at the beginning of this year when I read that there had not been any Black female comic writers at Marvel ever. So crazy. So that finally happened is a huge step forward. Yeah,
and even just Ta-Nehisi Coates' run is just extraordinary, and just the idea that they got, you want an African character, we'll get an African person who talk about it, and he's written books about this subject. He knows a lot about it, rather than having a white guy try to write the experiences of someone that's ruling a kingdom in Africa. That doesn't make that much sense.
So definitely made huge strides as far as and even trying out different things, like Mariko Tamaki isn't known for writing comics. She's known more for young adult things. And I think that happened with quite a few people. They brought in a lot of people who aren't specifically known for just writing comics, but a good writer is a good writer. Yeah.
I think that I'm really excited for that Marvel has hired more women writers, more women artists, colorists, and used more in the last year. And that they are hiring more people of color, having more people of color work on their comics. I really like David Walker's work on Power Man and Iron Fist, especially. And he also does Occupy Avengers. But I also appreciate that the men that write women comics don't write the women to be weak or drama queens or whatever. They write them to be write them to be strong women and
people in their own rights. They're not there to just be looked at by men or saved by men.
Exactly.
They're people.
And their costumes are not revealing. They're not
Right.
the
They're not just eye
Vampirella. Yeah.
Well, I think one good example of that would be the new Black Widow series that Mark Waid is doing right now. That I feel like he really understands her character and is doing a great job with her. And that's one thing I read over the break that I didn't mention was issue 9, where they brought Bucky back in. And I know, Mark Waid, that you're probably never going to hear this, but I'm going to ask you anyway to please give us a happy ending, even if it makes Ed Brubaker angry. I don't care. I know I saw an exchange on Twitter where he told him, don't mess this up. Please mess it up for him, because I need them to have a happy ending where everything is fine. She remembers him. They're still in love. It's okay.
And then it was all a dream.
No, don't Roseanne it.
Well, so that brings up 2 comics that I forgot to mention. Black Widow, I felt like that Mark Waid did such a good job writing a strong female character, and I felt like, in my opinion, for my money, Black Widow is the strongest female character in the Marvel universe.
She's pretty tough.
Currently, you know.
Currently, yeah. Although Spider-Woman is a mom, so.
Well, I feel like that she was, in a way, she's the strongest because she came up to Weeping Lion at the end of that first story arc and was like, I've always known that you were reading my mind, but now you're working for me. And just like, didn't even have to fight the villain. She just took over. So that was awesome. And then my second one was Spider-Woman.
Not to imply that women who aren't mothers aren't strong.
No, yeah.
I realized how that sounded after I said it, but anyway, continue.
I thought it was so great that Spider-Woman decided to become, that she wanted a child, but she didn't need to be with a man to become a mom. You know, she didn't want the relationship. She didn't want the physical, whatever, you know. She just became a mom and was fighting crime while she's pregnant. And then the dynamic between her and the porcupine, where she helps him to redeem himself from being a villain to becoming just a good guy. And he babysits for her after the baby is born. And, you know, she has the baby in space while saving the alien race and saving a Skrull prince. And they've just done a lot of awesome stuff. And then there was a community of women who were the wives of villains who were fed up with their villain husbands and villain boyfriends. And so they just started a community on their own. And they were extorting the villainous husbands and boyfriends to give them money to run the community. And Spider-Woman finds out about it and helps them get it set up so it's free and legal. And they just continue on and thrive. That's really awesome. That was really great. I also forgot to mention 2 of the Young Animal titles. Mother Panic, that's, as we previously, or just a minute ago, talked about, written by Jody Houser. It's such a dark title and a Bat family title, or at least set in Gotham. But I felt like it reminded me of the early Vertigo titles that came out, and that was kind of the point of the Young Animal imprint, was to harken back to those like early 90s Vertigo titles. And then Shade the Changing Girl, written by Cecil Castellucci,
which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, such a great comic. And I think that the way that I really identified and got excited by Doom Patrol Scout, felt that way about Shade the Changing Girl, and did some research into who Shade was, or Shade Rock was.
It was interesting too, because it was like with this avian from space coming in and into this young high school girl's existence. It was kind of a view of how terrible high school is from an outsider's point of view. So I feel like in a lot of ways it's I feel like they're trying to say something too, you know.
That was one of my favorite lines in that comic. Are you wearing a bra? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just the idea of taking something completely foreign and inserting them into this
volatile world.
Yeah, just high school it sucks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one of my favorites for the year too.
So it's been a amazing year for comics and a great year to start a podcast on it. We would like to thank all of you for supporting us and listening to us this year as we rant on and on about the comics we love. And we would like to invite you to continue listening to us this year and get more involved. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to
talk to you about comics.
Yeah, about comic books. So definitely, we'd love to know what comics you're reading and all of that. But before we close out our show, we have one segment for today. We just finished talking about a year of comics, the actual comic books. But now I'm going to sit down with Caleb Masters from the Good Trash Media Network and discuss comic book movies for an upcoming segment that he's going to be doing ongoing, where he's going to be reviewing comic book movies for our podcast. And we're going to just look back at all the comic book movies that came out this year and have a brief discussion about them. So I hope you enjoy it. All right, I am here with Caleb Masters of the Good Trash Media Network? Yes. Okay. You changed, I think, at the beginning of the year or so.
It was Good Trash. We were the Good Trash Genre Cast, which morphed into the Good Trash Media Network.
Full of shows, lots of different things that you're talking about. And you yourself have your own show.
Yes. So I am the producer and co-host of Back to the Movies. It's Good Trash Media's movie review show. It's a weekly show. Every single week we go into the movies. Sometimes we even look at straight to DVD or Netflix picks, but new movies that have just come out. We talk about them. We do a review, which is something on most of our main shows. We're more analysis driven. And we still do a little bit of that in Back to the Movies, where we like get into some like the themes and cooler ideas there. But we're really into talking about, hey, is this movie worth your time? And, should you spend money on it? And if you've already spent money on it, we give you a little bit of extra. And that's where we go into the weeds. We have like a whole spoiler section where we dive in and like just talk about some of the really cool themes in it. Like, I don't know, the patriarchy in Ghostbusters, for instance, is a fun one. But we also do a lot of superhero stuff. We did, I think, every major superhero release that came out last year.
Yeah, and so you had me on to talk about Suicide Squad originally.
Yeah.
And then you brought me back on for Rogue One. And I just love being on your show. I love your show. I listen to it with every movie that comes out that I'm really into. I'm like, oh, I want to hear what they have to say about this. I'm really interested in this. And it's even better when I get to sit at the table.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. No, it's been a huge blast having you on both times. We've had a great time.
Yeah. So it was that drove me to want to bring you in to our podcast to do a show where you could talk about those movies in a more brief way and then lead into having our guests come check you out on your network and the shows that you do about those movies in a longer conversation format.
Oh yeah. We're really excited. And when you approached me about it, I was like, that's great, because I love what you're doing with the kind of community building of Read Brave Comics. I think it's really cool. And just to be able to kind of lend some of our movie reviews to give your listeners a treat. And then if they're like, hey, we actually like what they're talking about, well, then you can go listen to us talk about it for, instead of 10 minutes, go listen to us talk about it for like an hour.
Yeah, for sure. So we thought this might be a great time to kick this show off here in the new year. We've had a year full of comic book movies, good and bad. And we have an upcoming year of really good looking ones. We'll see where that goes. And we thought it might be good to look back at the year that we've had of comic book movies and quickly discuss each one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. 2016, we had a lot of comic book movies. We're in an era where you're guaranteed to get like almost one a month these days.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of them. And, sometimes the more you get, it's not always the more good ones you get.
Yeah.
So, because we got a lot in 2016, and we'll talk about them kind of one by one, but I wasn't overly impressed by a lot of them.
Yeah, quantity is different than quality.
Indeed.
So the first major comic book movie that came out in 2016, Deadpool.
Yeah. So Ryan Reynolds, this was his pet project. He had been trying to get this off the ground for years. Going all the way back to that Wolverine Origins film, Ryan Reynolds was like, yeah, we're going to make a spinoff. It's going to be great. And then push come to shove, they couldn't get it off the ground. A lot of false starts here and there. And there's a lot of interesting stuff you can read into about how this movie got made. Someone leaked, air quotes, the footage, the test footage they showed to the studio, which is what got all this internet buzz. And then we got the movie. And people, I loved it. I'm actually blown away by how much people love the Deadpool movie.
Yeah, I think that just goes to show how much we're tired of the cookie cutter superhero movies. Because that's what it set out to do, was to say, hey, those are the superhero movies over there. And we're going to be the superhero movie over here doing something different. and everyone's like, oh, I like different.
They like it, and they like it because it's just so mean and rude and crude, which is, again, going against the grain of like what we've seen in a lot of Marvel films, especially because they're Disney owned. They can only go so far with the type of language they use and the amount of violence they can portray. So yeah, they're like, you know what, forget that. We're just going to go all out. And came out on Valentine's Day, the greatest Valentine's Day movie in recent years.
I had great advertising for that too.
Oh, the
Talking
marketing.
about the romance and it's a romantic movie. Take your girlfriend.
Flawless marketing. I mean,
and they even mentioned it in the film.
Oh yeah,
like Deadpool himself is like, I know what you're saying.
Yes,
you come here for this romance film, and you're seeing me shoot people.
Oh yeah. No, the opening credits of that great were starring some self-conceited douchebag and some directed by some white guy, stuff like that, which is it was great. I really liked Deadpool a lot, but I will say a couple of things about it. One of my criticisms in hindsight is you mentioned that it's doing something different, and it is, but it's not.
Yes.
So it is doing something different because, like all the things we just mentioned, it's cruder, there's more violence, it's really riffing hard on superhero movies.
Yeah.
There's tons of great inside jokes and Easter eggs for all of us who've been following superhero movies for a long time. But it's really funny. The movie is riffing on this formula, but if you really break it down, and you remove all that fun stuff.
Look
we
at
just
the
talked
plot
about,
structure.
It is still doing the same thing. So is that problematic? It doesn't bother a lot of people, and it doesn't necessarily bother me, but it's not as fresh as the movie would lead you to believe.
Right. Yeah, I think they came across some budget constraints that in scene you can definitely tell in that last scene. It's almost like a what do they call it on a TV show when they're stuck in one room because they're
it's like a bottle episode.
It's like a bottle episode. They're all just stuck there and they're trying to get through so much of that plot. Just let's finish this out. We needed the story. We had all these jokes, but we had to write a story too. And it was like last minute, the story was.
Right.
They just had all these jokes they wanted to tell.
Well, at the end of the day, it still falls back on all those same tropes and things, even down to the romance, which, and I love that actress from Firefly.
Yes,
her name.
she's fantastic.
She's great. I loved her as a romantic partner, but at the end of the day, she still ends up being the damsel in distress, I did really like the joke about the budget, though, with Colossus. It's like, man, we should get a bigger budget. It's like there's only 2 X-Men here ever. But it was a lot of fun. I don't know how long it's really... I think Deadpool as an icon is going to stick around, but how often people are going to go back and revisit that first film, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I actually just rewatched it, and I can say that the jokes, the humor of it holds up. The character himself holds up, but the plot was just really glaring to me toward the end of the movie. I was just like, oh, come on, just end it.
Just get over it. You get it over with. I watched it twice in theaters, and the second time about a month after it had come out, I was like, okay, yeah, about halfway through, I just got kind of bored because the jokes are so great, but it's just you get hit with so much of it, and when you already know where it's going, you're kind of like, all right.
Right.
But it's still, overall, I would say a successful film, and I'm glad people are tapping into Deadpool. I will say, not sure I want a Deadpool 2 as much as I want Deadpool in another movie, like a cable movie or something like that.
That would be interesting.
Because I think he's stronger. They were able to make him work here as a lead, which is great. But I think generally speaking, he's a lot stronger and better suited as a supporting character.
Well, I think its legacy is going to be that we can now see R-rated superhero films, and that's something that's going to stick around. And speaking of that idea, the darker, grittier, more violent, the next superhero movie that we had, the next comic book movie that we had, was Batman v Superman, a very highly anticipated film ever since I Am Legend first teased it as a billboard.
It was
in
prophesized. It was prophesized. Now we're just waiting for the apocalypse to kill us all. Yes.
Any moment now.
Yeah. This one, I was cautiously optimistic about it going in. I was worried, and I had previously been a Zack Snyder defender, but after this year, I think I'm kind of done. Because the movie it's a mess. Fundamentally as a movie, it's broken, right? So it's got like weird editing issues, like that third act, whenever there's that big battle between them and the don't want to spoil it, bad guy, big bad in the movie. Like I wasn't sure who was what, where, when. It was really hard for me to keep track of what was going on with everyone. And like there was weird things. I'm like, oh, why is this character still over here? They've been over here for like 30 minutes while they're doing all this. It just was weird. So it was boring because the pacing was just terrible. Like it was the plot was really uneven. I got bored about halfway through. I was like, all right, oh no, there's an hour left to go because it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. Yeah. And so I've got a lot of problems with it as a film. I don't think it works very well as a movie critic. If I'm removing my fandom aside for Batman and Superman, I'm like, this just isn't a good movie.
Yeah.
Now, as a fan though, massively fundamental misunderstanding, in my opinion, of both characters. Batman's offing people like nonchalantly. Yes. I watched the director's cut and did like a live tweet about it when I was watching it, and I can't remember what the count was, but he kills director indirectly kills like more than 50 people in this movie.
And what got me about that is one of the things I went into that gave me hope about this film was seeing that Batman was going to address the issues I had with Superman from Man of Steel. And I'd seen that movie and I didn't really care for it much. I thought that Snyder dropped the ball in multiple places. I'm not even a big Superman fan, but I was like, that's not really Superman, man. Come on. And I saw that Batman was going to address it. And he was going to be like, you need to not kill people. But then he just did the same thing to Batman.
I know.
So Batman's angry at Superman for destroying things, but Batman's killing people left and right. I guess they are criminals. Okay. I do understand it, but still, both characters ended up broken.
Batman's just mad at Superman because I want to be angry at something. Yeah. It's really. I mean, they do set him up with a motivation in the opening of the film, and there are things in the movie that work. I will say I actually really love the opening with Bruce Wayne driving through Metropolis, Gotham, where it's from his perspective versus Superman at the end of Man of Steel. I thought that was a really cool touch, and I will say I don't like the way that Batman was written. But I do like what Ben Affleck brings to the table.
Yes, that was actually super surprising. Having also been a huge Daredevil fan, I thought Affleck was going to ruin everything.
Yeah.
Because he did previously with another hero I love.
Daredevil was really bad.
Yes. And he actually blew my mind. I couldn't believe how good he did in this. And I'm actually excited to see another role of him being Batman again. So I'm looking forward to that, whatever may be a good film or bad film, but I think he'll do a good job.
Written and directed by Ben Affleck, and he has proven time and time again that he is a very competent director. So I'm a lot more interested to see what he's going to do with that character versus, Zack Snyder and David Goyer. Yeah. I will say for listeners, if you really are curious and you haven't caught it yet, I do think it's a movie that's worth watching if you're curious and you're a fan. But and this is going to sound bonkers weird. Go watch the director's cut. Now, the director's cut does not fix my fundamental problems with the film by and large, but it does fix especially with the character portrayals. But it does, I think, help the film pacing a little bit, even though it's way longer. Like it's 3.5 hours long, which is super long. Like the scenes they cut actually help give the plot a sense of momentum, so you're more engaged. And also, wouldn't you know it? It shows Superman saving people. What?
Imagine that.
I know.
In a world where Superman saves people.
But overall, though, huge disappointment. That is strike one. I didn't hate Man of Steel. I'm pretty neutral on it. I like things about it. I dislike things. But BVS for me is a big strike one.
Yeah, that was definitely strike two for me. Man of Steel I was not impressed with. But I did leave the theater happy. And I feel like I do need to address this.
Oh, good.
Because I walked into that movie having heard some bad reviews, having heard what it was going to be, already disappointed in Snyder, seeing what Man of Steel was. So I had all of that backing it up going, okay, here's what I want out of this film. I'm a huge Batman fan. I think he'd win in the fight against Superman. I mean, not obviously in close quarters if you just lock him in the room and say, go at it. Of course not. But if he's given the time and the resources. And I said, I want Batman to get into a fight with Superman, and the fight only stops because Batman says it does.
Okay,
he beats the crap out of Superman, and it stops because he says it does. And I was happy.
Well,
I left happy.
And that's great. That's good and all until someone hits his trigger word. So apparently, if you want to stop Batman ever, you just say Martha.
Yep. I hope no villains were watching that, because if so, Batman will never beat anyone up again.
No, I mean the Joker.
Like, Martha. Why are you saying that?
Think of all the years that Joker or Penguin could have just said Martha.
Martha.
All right, so what do we got next?
So if we're doing more than just the cinematic films, we're doing like maybe the animated releases that DC does very well. The next one would be Justice League versus Teen Titans, but neither of us actually got a chance to see that.
I've heard it was good.
Teen Titans is a great team, a great story usually when they do it in different medias. Of course, Young Justice was fantastic in the TV show, and they're bringing that back. Thank you. But we haven't watched it, so we can't really talk about it.
That's right. I forgot to bring it. Okay, yeah, they're bringing it back. Geek out moment. They're bringing back Young Justice. Okay.
So the next major one that we're going to address would be Captain America Civil War. And this was highly anticipated because it's huge. It's Avengers 2.5.
Right? Yeah. It's not Avengers, guys, but it's got all the Avengers
but it
in
is.
it. Yeah. Actually, a better Iron Man sequel than Iron Man 2.
I'd say so.
So I actually just rewatched this because Disney and Netflix struck a deal. So Captain America Civil War is now streaming on Netflix, which is crazy to me. It just came out this last year. And I just watched it a second time. It's a great movie. It's lots of fun. It's great spectacle. I do think it's got some pacing problems it takes a long time to get ill. Especially, I noticed it the first time, but especially the second time, I was like, man, it takes a while to get going.
Yeah, I didn't really notice it the first time because I think I was so hyped by it. But I especially noticed it. I also just rewatched this over my Christmas break with my mom, showing her it for the first time. And when you're showing someone else, you're a lot more aware of pacing issues because you're like, oh, get somewhere. They're going to get bored with this. Get somewhere.
Get somewhere before my mom gets bored. I totally feel you because you want them to like get engaged, but the movie is a little slower. And Yeah, but I mean, I will say, I think this is, in my opinion, the best argument for why one of these giant, massive crossover film universes is worth it. Because even more than Avengers 1 and 2, the emotional stakes here are really high, especially when with the core conflict being between Captain America and Iron Man. I think what's really great to me is that you can go back and watch the previous films, and you like the points that they're arguing for are totally in line with these characters that we've seen before. And like it's almost like this collision was eventually going to happen one way or the other, because you have Tony Stark, who's this guy who is just like so guilty about everything he's ever done. So the second like he realizes, oh, we blew up a country. Of course he's gonna be like, no, we gotta go back and fix it. We gotta fix our mistakes. You know, he disarmed his weapons when he realized they were harmful.
Right.
And you can see, you know, with his relationship with Pepper. Anyway, but with Captain America, it's different because we saw in one, and especially in Winter Soldier, which is amazing, that he doesn't trust big government. He doesn't trust. He values his personal autonomy a lot more than the other characters do, because he's seen what happens at a systematic corruption that's happened with Hydra infiltrating, you know, the government and S.H.I.E.L.D. So he's got this inherent distrust. And so it's really interesting and emotionally powerful when you see these two characters that you're really invested in just go head to head.
Right.
And on top of that, we got Spider-Man.
Yes.
And he was so fun.
So this movie, I'm a huge Marvel fan. Everyone that listens to this podcast knows this. And Spider-Man is within my top 3 of all franchises of comic books ever. And I was so looking forward to this. Having seen the trailers and everything, I was like, so they're going to introduce Spider-Man. They're going to do it. They better do it right. They're finally going to do it right. I hope they do it right, because Sony dropped the ball, and I was not happy with those movies. While I could take them for what they were, because it was all I had, knowing that there could be something better just made me think of them as garbage. And so I went into it so excited about that. And I left happy with it, but I left much more happy looking forward to Black Panther.
Yes.
This movie really plays like an amazing trailer for the new Spider-Man and Black Panther franchises.
And this is them doing. This is what they tried to do with Avengers 2, and they tried to do with Iron Man 2, where they failed. This one was able to build a launch pad for these new characters without feeling like it was really slowing down or getting in the way of the plot. Like those other films, they try so hard to do all this world building, universe building, but a lot of times it's just noticeable and gets in the way. And it's noticeable here, but I think like these characters feel a lot more organic. I mean, especially on the second time, I was like, okay, I guess we really didn't need Spider-Man, but who cares? We got Spider-Man. And you know, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Why is Ant-Man in this movie? I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. He's there and he does some cool stuff.
Yeah, at least he met with 1 or 2 of the Avengers in his own movie, and there's a connection there. So okay.
Again, it's fun. Like
fun jokes.
Yeah, it's like stuff like that. I'm a lot more likely to forgive. But you know, overall, I think it was a great way to start the summer blockbuster. I still had a lot of fun. Held up on rewatch value. I don't think it. I will say though, my initial reaction was, oh my gosh, this changed the Marvel Cinematic Universe forever. Yes. It's a big deal. I don't know how they're going to go back. And then on rewatching it the second time, I was like, no, they just want us to think they did it, because like, actually, here's a cell phone. If you ever need anything, give me a call. I was like, oh, okay, well.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they do coming forward after that. Of course, we have another movie to talk about, but it's not as well connected. But next year, we're going to get some more. And then, of course, the next couple of years, we're going to get a lot more.
Avengers.
And I think more than anything with this film, I left liking it. But what I liked more is it made me really excited for comic book movies.
Yes,
again.
yeah.
And so I'm really excited looking forward. It was like the best trailer you could have ever had, because it got me really hyped to see what was coming. And it guaranteed that my money's going to Marvel in the movies.
Oh, yeah. No, this is definitely like, hey, you guys were getting bored with us? Well, guess what? We've got a whole bunch of awesome stuff lined up for you now. All right. So what do we have next, Vin?
So next is another movie that I was excited about, because one of my other top 3 franchises in comic books is X-Men.
Oh, you too?
I've always been a huge X-Men fan since the 90s when I was a little kid. Just always wanted to be in the X-Men. Loved every X-Men. Loved reading all those stories. Wished that there was an X-Men movie. And when one came out, I was really super excited.
Oh man, I love X-Men. I love X-Men hardcore. So I'm not I'm not like an avid X-Men comic book reader. I know I've read several, like in the big ones, but you know, Age of Apocalypse and Days of Future Past, you know, the really big ones. But I have watched like every X-Men cartoon that's come out, like obsessively, and I love the X-Men characters so much. I love Wolverine. I love Professor X. I love Magneto. I love Iceman. I love Storm. I just love the X-Men. So I'm right there. And honestly, Days of Future Past still top 3 superhero movies of all time for me. I loved that movie.
It was really good. Yeah.
I just was able to do that giant crossover thing, and I felt like the emotion was there, and it was still fan service, because I remember before they announced it, I was like, man, I want to see time travel in an X-Men movie. I want to see Hugh Jackman interact with the first class cast. I was like, bam, cool. But what do we get after that? We get X-Men Apocalypse. And, I was excited on the principle. Admittedly, the trailers were not very good, and I was really unsure how they were going to pull Apocalypse off.
Yeah. Well, here's why I was so excited. I said that I started reading X-Men comics in the 90s, but I didn't read 90s X-Men comics. I started reading X-Men in the 90s, and I read X-Men comics from the 70s and the 80s. And this is where I fell in love with the X-Men. Storm had a mohawk.
Yes.
They hung out at the mall.
Yes.
Everything was like neon, punk rock, glam. It was beautiful. And what I saw them doing in the character designs in Apocalypse and the feel of it, and of course it's set in the 80s because they're doing this decade hop thing for every movie, it seems like, was this perfect collection of everything I loved about the X-Men. Oh, they're going to be a mall. Storm has a mohawk. Is that Psylocke? Look at Nightcrawler. Everything's perfect. Look at Jubilee. She's so 90s. Look at that bubblegum pop. I love it.
Wait, Jubilee was in this movie?
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
And so what I got, what actually I wanted, ended up just being a deleted scene in the movie.
Yeah. It's okay. So here's the bummer. This movie was trying to spin too many plates, and I think it's trying to remain marketable by keeping in those characters that everyone wants to check in on. We want to see more Magneto and Professor X, right? But really, what I think would have been smarter for their franchise, and honestly, probably would have told a more interesting story, would have been to focus more on young Cyclops, young Jean Grey, young Storm, like young Nightcrawler, again, doing the mall scenes, like doing stuff like that, I think would have been a lot more interesting, because as much as I enjoy seeing more McAvoy and Fassbender and Jennifer Lawrence doing all their stuff, all of their plots kind of felt like rehashes of the other movies. I mean, Magneto, his scenes were great. Fassbender sold it. I was so sad whenever he lost his family, but I was like, okay, how many times are we going to see Magneto's happiness stripped away from him, and Professor X, him and like, feels like they're just talking in circles at this point.
Yes. Yeah, and there really is that deleted scene. You can go get the DVD, watch the deleted scene. It's everything this movie should have been. It should have been more of that, at least. Focus on those characters, like you said. I am excited that they're going to be doing a New Mutants film in the future.
Yeah.
Because New Mutants was my team, like more than just the regular X-Men. New Mutants was where it was at for me, and I could see them doing really good things with that. I just hope they don't drop the ball on that, but that's for a future talk.
And okay, and one other thing about the point about this movie, and I didn't hate it. I actually feel pretty middle of the road about it.
There was a lot of good things in it.
I'm a fan, so I'm gonna be. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be biased. A couple things I want to mention. You know what? I don't care that we got our second Quicksilver scene. It was still great the second time.
Yeah,
loved it the second time. And I just have to point out like how ridiculous some of the scenes in this movie were in a way that I enjoy. But there's a scene where Magneto literally gets a telekinetic phone call from Xavier while Apocalypse is designing a costume. He's like, oh, wait, Apocalypse, I got a call. Hold on, hon. And he's like, Charles, I told you, I'm done. I can't go back. And then in the background, you can see him like, just like, all right, I need to add some more cape here. Like, it's just like whenever you
fashion show Apocalypse.
Yeah, fashion. It's just ridiculous, but it's fun. And also Oscar Isaac, amazing actor. And I just think he had some poor direction because Apocalypse in this movie was lame.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that didn't even make sense. Like Apocalypse had all these powers that he could easily do all these things, but when it came to fighting the X-Men, he only used half of them.
Yeah. Well, his powers are never clearly defined. Right. So it's like he just pulled out powers out of thin air. And I don't inherently, at its base, I don't think Apocalypse is the most interesting villain anyway. But like the things that are interesting about him, like his whole like, survival of the fittest, evolution, they hardly touched on. So I don't know. It was just kind of a missed opportunity. Overall though, I'm proud to own it.
Yeah. And I do really like that I thought it was pretty ingenious of them to bring in Jean Grey and the Wolverine thing, and we're like, oh, here's Wolverine's origins. Oh. There's this connection here. And I was like,
it doesn't make sense when you start tracking.
Cool.
It's really cool, but when you start to follow the time travel, it doesn't make, again, you're like, I don't care. This is a cool scene. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. But it was kind of cool to pull that in. Of course, they just wanted to get Wolverine in there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's funny because when you look at box office receipts, the movies without Hugh Jackman just do worse. So like, we got to get him for a cameo. And it's weird, and I'm sad it's that way, but All right, so the next movie I think was a film that I didn't even realize was a comic book movie until we were talking about it here, and that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Out of the Shadows.
Yeah, did you know what the origin of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles being created as a comic book is?
I do now, because Arthur actually talked about it. My former co-host Back to the Movies, Arthur Gordon, enlightened me on that episode, and I was like, oh, these were apparently very dark comic books. I had no idea.
Inspired by Frank Miller's take on Daredevil.
I just thought they were cool teenage turtles who like to eat pizza and throw samurai stars, you know? So did you get to catch this one, Vinton?
I didn't. I've only actually still only seen half of the first one. So
you're better off that way.
So I saw the trailers for it and got really excited because they were apparently really wanting to do fan service, at least in the trailers. I don't know about the film.
Well, it has lots of fan service, but it's all like empty fan service, right? It's like, hey, Bebop and Rocksteady, but we don't actually understand why they're fun. We're just going to put them in there and then make them have, and in true Michael Bay fashion, give them all sorts of fart jokes, and all that, it's just dirty joke. Like they were making raunchy, dirty jokes for no reason like that.
Well, it's Michael Bay, so are the farts like dubstep farts though, at least?
Oh, they should have been. In fact, I'm sure if you get on YouTube, there's probably a remix in there somewhere. I'm not a huge TMNT fan. I mean, I just missed that boat, but I like that people like it, and I went and saw it hoping it would be good, and we did end up talking on that one too, and it was just okay.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was in love with the animated series. Being a huge comic book guy, I actually haven't really ever read any Ninja Turtle comics, but I love the action figures.
Well, the action figures are cool, and I know like the original series is supposed to be great, and I've heard some of the newer ones, like even there was one that came on like Nickelodeon a couple 10 years or so ago that was supposed to be really good. I heard the animated stuff is all great.
Yeah.
The movie, however, is a train wreck. You shouldn't waste your money. And yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, Trainwreck is a good segue to our next film we're going to be talking about here, which is the animated adaptation of Batman the Killing Joke. This is one of the straight-to-video ones. Well, they did put it in select theaters.
Fathom did do an event, and I totally went and saw it. I spent $18 to go see this in the theater.
So Batman the Killing Joke is one of the most praised Batman graphic novels or collections of comics that there is. People talk about this all the time and how it changed the face of comics, changed the way Batman was done, changed the way we looked at a lot of things. And then we get this film.
Well, it doesn't do any of those things.
No. As a matter of fact, they said, hey, this isn't enough story for us to make a movie out of. Why don't we put a lot of weird sexist stuff in it as well to fill that time?
So here's the thing. I knew they were adding stuff, but the way they talked about it, I was like, oh, we're going to get a cool Batgirl story. I was really into it. Like, well, we're going to get Batgirl more. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. It sets her up to be this tragic fall when the Joker shoots her and paralyzed her. I'm like, okay, I get the idea you're going with. So I was okay with the idea of them adding something. But two things. One, I didn't realize they were adding half a movie. Two, this is not Batgirl. Okay, this is Batgirl. She is just lingering. She wants to get with Batman, like romantically, which was something that was always hinted at in the beloved Batman animated Batman Beyond. Actually, was where it started. But in that whole animated universe that we all love, it was something that was hinted at, but they never went there. And I guess they were like, all right, we're gonna go here for this movie, and I don't really like it. I think it really takes away from her character quite a bit. So the first, and it's literally half the movie too. So the first half of the movie is terrible. I wouldn't wish anyone to watch it. I think, especially for people who are watching Batgirl, it's gonna really, who maybe aren't as familiar, it's gonna do some huge damage there. Now the second half, which is actually the adaptation portion, I think it's a pretty good adaptation, but I didn't really like it, which had me go back and read the graphic novel again, which is on my shelf, and I was like, maybe I don't like this graphic novel as much as I used to, because I read that whenever I was getting into comic books in high school, and that was, one of, again, as you said, like one of the most important Batman stories, and I think it was super important at the time, but reading it now, I'm just like, I don't really like this Batman very much. He's just kind of mopey, and I like the exploration of him and the Joker, and I think Mark Hamill still kills this script. I mean, he's so good. I mean, I could listen to him talk all day, and this is the project he's been wanting to do for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's amazing. And I think Kevin Conroy is still really great, but the story's just kind of okay. It feels almost like torture porn, honestly.
Yeah.
And I went back and read the graphic novel, and I said, art's beautiful. I kind of feel the same way about that too. Yeah. So I don't know what that says about me. A lot of people will probably disagree.
Well,
but
and even if you come down to, I love the graphic novel, you're only going to love half this movie then.
Yeah, no, exactly. I tell people who watch, I'm like, okay, what you want to do is you want to go to scene selection and go to the one where it's actually the starting point. It's only like 40 minutes max, but still, I would skip the entire first half.
Yeah.
So more train wrecks.
Yeah, so this train will not stop wrecking. You'd think it would come off the rails and come to a quick stop, but no, it just keeps tumbling down a hill, apparently.
It's like the train wreck in Super 8, man. It just doesn't stop.
Yeah, it just keeps going. Because next we had Suicide Squad, and this was the first one you invited me on to do on your show, and I got to go see it with all of you guys for the Good Trash Media Network. And we all sat there just amazed and how much this film did not live up to the hype that the trailers created.
None. Like, and the trailers were so good. They're still so good.
So good.
What I don't know how this movie I don't know who signed off on this movie, because I'm pretty sure if you gave a college student the budget of this film, they could make a better movie. Like, because it's, I don't. We'll start with, again, going same way with BVS. I'll start with my problems with it as a film, film critic wise. This movie is chopped to pieces. Edits, quick cuts don't make sense. There's a music cue for the first half of the movie. What did we start? We actually in the movie we're like, how many more music cues?
Yeah.
We started counting like it was. There is every song you've ever loved in a movie is also in this movie.
Yeah, I felt like I was watching MTV. There was just music videos. That's all it was. It was just music video after music video.
David Ayer's like, all right, I want to put vignettes for every character in there, and there's so many of them, and it feels like it starts 3 times.
Yeah, there's 3 starts to this movie.
There's like a prologue, there's a beginning, and then there's like we're assembling the team, and then it just goes on.
And I didn't think that my desire to watch this could be any less up until that trailer, because I already came off of Batman vs. Superman, already upset with the way DC's doing stuff. I'm already not going to enjoy this. I don't care much for the perception of Harley Quinn. I like the character Harley Quinn, the original, especially from the animated series. But where people actually try to take her, I don't usually end up liking. And then I saw this Joker that they were presenting to me and saying was the Joker. And I was like, I don't think so. I'm just against all of this. I don't think I'm going to go see this. And then I saw that trailer and I went, well, damn.
It looks pretty good. Yeah.
I want to go see this now.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so, in my opinion, jury's still out on whether or not the new Joker works, because guess what? He's not in the movie enough, really, for you to, at least for me, there wasn't enough for me to be like, oh, I like him or not. I'm like, well, he's in like 5 minutes, maybe.
I wrote a review for this on Letterboxd, and I said, at the very end, you might have noticed I didn't mention Joker. Well, that's because he's hardly worth mentioning, because he's hardly in the movie.
Yeah, no, which is, again, marketing played him up big time.
Yeah, every scene that he's in is in the trailer.
Yeah, no, exactly. Every scene. And actually, there are scenes that didn't make it into the movie in the trailers that he's in, too. Which, again, this movie apparently had 4 cuts that got sent to the studio,
which may have been a big problem. I mean, I think it would have had problems anyways. I don't think that.
Well, David Ayer, they knocked out the script for this thing in like 2 weeks. Which, FYI, if you guys who don't know how the sausage is made with movies, you don't. That's stupid fast.
Yeah,
but that's hardly even a first draft. And so the movie I don't think it really knew what it wanted to be. It didn't really know what it was about. But it really wants us to know they're the bad guys.
Yes.
Did you know?
I think, there's some kind of Suicide Squad.
So, oh gosh, Will Smith is great with what he's given to do.
Yes,
I don't like the way Harley Quinn is written.
Right, but she was portrayed well.
Well, yes, the actress Margot Robbie is really good and is kind of chewing the scenery, so she's good. But man, rough movie. I'm not even gonna. This is not like BVS where I say if you're curious. No, please do yourself a favor.
Don't be curious.
Skip this movie. Go buy the soundtrack. It's better.
Go read the comic book,
please.
So next up, we had the continuation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and a new character with a lot of criticism already going into the film because of their casting choices. You have Doctor Strange, which is a character that was based out of a lot of racist caricatures to begin with. The character, of course, I think we might mention on the podcast, was started as an Asian man and really poorly racistly done. And then they decided, oh no, we want him to be white now, and so they made him a white person.
We're gonna bring Tilda Swinton. Oh, but it's a woman, so it's progressive, right?
Yeah, and then they made Tilda Swinton the ancient one, and it's like, okay, well, I don't. And then they said, well, it's because our other foreign markets are racist and they won't see our movie if we don't. And I'm like, well, I don't. Oh, okay. And then they were like, well, and we also don't want to be racist because it was a caricature of the character. Well, okay. You have a lot of excuses for why you're just putting more white people in this movie.
It's not a white dude. It's a woman. So yeah, that makes up for it, right?
Which I will go far enough to say, if you're going to whitewash a film, at least cast Tilda Swinton, who looks otherworldly. At least,
yes, exactly. looks otherworldly, acts otherworldly. You're like, not. She's actually pretty gender neutral. I mean, she is a woman, but like she's not. She's pretty gender neutral.
And so I went in knowing that all this criticism was there and this controversy, but still really wanting Marvel to hit another home run. And while I don't think it was a home run, I think it was a well played game.
Yes. What did this movie is excessively mediocre, I think was our joke. I think the spectacle of this film was amazing. Okay, that scene, I just want to preface this. There's a couple of really amazing scenes. They go into this whole mirror world, do this really cool Inception style battle where the world's turning and the buildings are folding over on each other. Awesome. That's cool. And I also think that my favorite scene is the final confrontation. And I won't spoil like the plot or anything like that, but I will tell you exactly kind of the spectacle of it. Okay, Doctor Strange is fighting the bad guy in reverse. Like the world is the city. The bad guys have already destroyed the city, and Doctor Strange comes in and reverses it. So he's fighting the bad guys as the city is rebuilding itself. And I'm just saying that's a pretty impressive feat. I was pretty blown away by that. Outside of that, though, and the movie does resolve with a peaceful resolution. Doctor Strange using his wits, not his hands, which makes sense for his character. I really appreciated those things about it. But otherwise, there's this really great movie. It's called Iron Man 1. You can go see it.
A lot of similarities.
Like striking similarities, almost exactly down to a T.
Yes. I will say that I think it's a good introduction for this character. I think they could do great things with him from here. One of my favorite things about the film was the visuals. It was one of the best 3D movies I had seen. Like, it's really worth
the
seeing
3D
in
was
3D.
definitely
It was beautiful. And I think even without being in 3D, it's still going to be beautiful image wise. But again, there's a lot of that cookie cutter story, doing the same thing that Marvel likes to do. This is their pattern. This is what they're going to do. And I think they're really going to have to break this if they're going to want to continue to get our money and get us to be hyped about these movies. And I think they're going to try to do that in this coming year. They're learning some lessons. I think a lot of these movies were starting to get made before those lessons were learned. And we're all looking at them going, this is 2016, guys. Come on, we've learned these lessons. We're like, well, we started making this 2 years ago.
Well, and with a character like Doctor Strange, who they're not sure about because he's not super well known, not as marketable, like it makes more sense for them to play it safe with that character than say like an Iron Man or a Spider-Man, right?
So I'm more interested to see what they're going to be doing next Avengers movie. Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is going to have a lot of freedom, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that.
Thor Ragnarok coming out next year,
yes,
also.
which is completely out of the left field. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
And the final one that we're going to talk about isn't necessarily a comic book movie in the sense that it was created in the comics and then went to be on the movie, but it is a comic book movie in the sense that it was made into a movie and it immediately became a comic book before the sequels were ever released and has sustained a life in the comics, is continued to stretch its canon and stretch its universe, even to the point where when Disney bought it and reset that canon, they automatically hooked up with Marvel and set new stories to expand that canon again. And that's Star Wars. We have Rogue One just came out. And that was the next conversation. You invited me into your podcast, and man, that was a fun movie.
It was a fun movie, and a lot of emotional weight to it too. I watched it a second time over the Christmas break, and the things I had wrong with it stick out more, but the things I like about it also stick out more. So Act 3 of that movie is one of the best Act 3s we've gotten in a Star Wars movie. You've got this amazing spectacle, incredible dogfight. The stakes are sky high. Yeah. We get some of the best Darth Vader scene we've ever seen. And it's still great the second time. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to love here. I do feel like in retrospect the characters are pretty flat and conceptually interesting, pretty boring, and they not well executed. But I think for this being the first outing with the Star Wars, one of these Star Wars stories or spinoffs or whatever, I think it's great. It's a great first start. I just think, there's a rumor that there was a lot of behind the scenes problems with all the reshoots that went on that's come out since the film was released, and I'd be really interested to hear kind of more of that story. And I think we even talked about, you're like, hey, I want to see the extended cut of this movie.
Yeah, definitely. I hope they do release some of these deleted scenes, this extended cut, because as we mentioned in the podcast, a lot of that trailer wasn't even in the film. So it seemed like they had a lot of ideas and a lot of story that didn't end up making that cutting room floor.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because it definitely feels like there was places where there was more there. And I think back to at the beginning of the film, they're trying to find this character named Saul Guerrero, played by Forrest Whitaker. And I felt like he was supposed to be a lot more important than he actually was, but especially on the second viewing, I was like, wait, why did we have to go to this guy to get the stuff? Like, I mean, they justify it in the plot, but it just feels kind of like, we didn't really need that guy to get this information. But again, I don't want to bad talk it because I think this is a great movie. It was the movie I saw twice this Christmas. I think it's wonderful. And I mean, if you're a Star Wars fan, just so much fan service and so much fun and a great way to tide us over until episode 8 next year.
Yeah. So quick overlook of the year. We started with Deadpool and we ended it with Rogue One. And before we started recording, we had this idea of just setting this noise for what the films were. Deadpool, we were like at a, and then we went on, Yeah, so that's the year in movies for comic books, and that's the sound that represents it.
You're like, you start excited, and then you just train wreck keeps
Yep.
on going, and then we
Yep.
kind of end on, well, maybe.
Yeah. You get a couple notes of hope in there, only to be kicked in the teeth.
That's right.
So 2017, though, looking to be a fun year for movies.
It's funny because I actually talked about a lot on our 2016 Back to the Movies podcast, who is, again, comic book fan, but how tired I was of superhero movies a lot. But I've got to say, looking at our upcoming slate, and after Civil War, I am really excited about 2017 comic book movies.
Yes, absolutely.
It's gonna be fun. It looks fresh. I don't know. We'll kind of run through the list really quickly, but I just want to hear when maybe we could talk about like one or two we're most excited for.
Yeah. So what's funny is I'm obviously most excited for Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man, and I'm obsessed. But after seeing that Logan trailer, I never thought I'd trust Wolverine again in the movie. And that Logan trailer,
it looks amazing. And Hugh Jackman really wants to make sure he goes out on top with this one because he's taking a pay cut to make sure it gets an R rating. And he really wanted the second one to be the movie. And honestly, I actually think the Wolverine, the second one, is really, really good. Like, I think it's pretty exceptional.
I think it's really good
until
the
last 20 minutes. And then they're like, wait, oh guys, this is a comic movie. We gotta throw in CGI stuff.
He has expressed his displeasure with what happened with the end of that film.
Exactly. So I think he's trying one more time to make sure this is perfect. And I know through the scripting process, he says, no, we're not gonna roll with this until I say so, because he's a producer now. So the trailer was incredible. It looks like it's gonna be a very deep, reflective, intimate character story, and that's why I liked the second Wolverine so much, because world's not ending if he doesn't succeed. It's a very personal story, and I think that's something we lack in a lot of the Marvel films because everything's about saving the world. This one is a very kind of low key, character driven story. So that's my most anticipated for next year. Would be the Logan trailer. I heard that the Logan movie, not the trailer.
So we have the Lego Batman movies going to kick us off for the year.
Yes, in February.
It looks super exciting.
Well,
the trailer for there
look
real fun.
Yeah.
If it's anything like the Lego movie, it's going to be real fun, and it looks like it's going to carry that same passion with it. Of course, then we have Logan. We have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2,
Yes.
which I think is going to do good things. I mean, the first one did have its problems, but I think it introduced a lot of newer things to the Marvel Universe, a new spirit.
It is, and that is still in the Marvel movies in general are pretty fun, but that is still the most fun I've had in a comic movie is Guardians of the Galaxy 1.
And then we're going to have a chance for DC to redeem itself. And what will actually maybe be the last chance for a lot of us if it fails.
This is the last chance for me because, I said earlier, BVS was strike 1. Suicide Squad was strike 2. Strike 3, I don't trust them anymore. And the trailers look great, but you know what? The trailers look great for Suicide Squad too. So nothing makes me happier than seeing a Wonder Woman slide across the floor and snap a rifle right on her butt. You know, like I'm like that's exciting. That gets me excited. And all the other stuff is great, but I don't know if I trust them anymore.
Yeah.
So
Wonder Woman looks great. She was portrayed really well in Batman vs Superman. So I'm hoping that carries over to this because she was probably the best part about that film.
Gal Gadot was great.
But yes, probably the best part about that film. So Wonder Woman, high hopes, real high hopes that could be thrown across the stones real easily.
Fingers crossed.
Then we have Spider-Man.
Yes.
Of course we're excited about Spider-Man.
Very, very excited about Spider-Man.
This is a fresh start, and I think they're going to do a good thing with it. You're going to have some cameos. It's going to be heavily tied into the MCU, even though Sony still has the rights. They're working together now a little bit.
Well, and we finally get to see, for people who have been reading, Marvel comics, you understand that Tony Stark is a very important character in Peter Parker's life,
Yes.
and we actually are going to get to see that on the screen,
Yeah.
which is very exciting. And also, I will say, we're not going to have to deal, or it looks like we're not going to have to deal with another origin story, which I think everyone's over Spider-Man origin stories.
Yeah, definitely over those. The next one that we have coming up is going to be very interesting because, well, we knew we were going to see more of Thor. And we probably knew we were going to see more of Hulk. We heard we weren't going to see more Hulk movies, but we were going to see him in other movies. I don't think any of us planned on there being a Planet Hulk movie, which is what it looks like we're going to get with a Thor header. So It's interesting to see what that's going to look like.
Right. Yeah, it's really funny. There's a long story for why that works, but push comes to shove, Marvel can't distribute a full-blown Hulk movie because Universal still holds the distribution rights. It's very confusing. But so what they did here, though, very clever. We're going to have a road trip movie with the Hulk where we spend like half the movie on Planet Hulk. So yeah. I am so game.
Yeah, it looks super good. Like they haven't released much, but they've shown like Hulk's armor and some little clips here, and of course some joking promos that they've put forth. I'm super excited for this. And a lot of people have talked bad about the logo that they've done. I kind of love this 80s feel to it.
Oh yeah, me too. Because here's the thing. I'll be honest, I really don't like Thor. I don't like the character. I don't like the movies. Loki, for me, is way more interesting and has also carried both of the films.
He's always been my least favorite part of the Marvel Universe. I don't know why. I understand why people like him, but he's just never carried much.
He's kind of bland. He's supposed to be an equivalent to Superman in a lot of ways, except for I don't think he stands for the same values.
Yes.
And
he just likes to fight.
He comes across as a meathead, which is unfortunate because I think there's more there than that. But and we've got, again, not just Wonder Woman next year. We've got Justice League.
Yeah, ending out the year on Justice League. And we're going to get to see how DC's grand experiment works of trying to flip the Marvel formula on its head and say, we're going to just introduce one or two of these characters, and then we're going to just throw you into the whole team before we show you their own movies. So it'll be interesting to see how that works for them.
You know, and Zack Snyder's still directing, so I'm cautious because they went back and apparently lightened things up quite a bit after the BVS reception. Because I don't know if listeners, you know this, they started filming that movie a week after BVS came out. So they had to react really quickly to the overwhelming negative reactions they got from people who thought it was too dark and too just nasty and boring and stuff. So the Comic-Con reel we got last year seemed to indicate that they were definitely going for a more playful feel.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for our 2017 look ahead as well. And you will be hearing more from Caleb on a ongoing segment for Read Brave Comics, where he will be expounding, like we mentioned, short reviews for these comic movies as they come out, and then leading you toward his podcast where he's going to have longer conversations and diving into some of those movies in a more in-depth way.
Yeah, we're just going to give you guys a little blurb about the movie if you guys are listening to Read Brave, but we always want, if you guys you want more than just a quick thumbs up, thumbs down, we really hope you'll go head on over to goodtrashmedia.com and look us up on Back to the Movies, or subscribe to our podcast, Back to the Movies on iTunes. And that's going to be hosted by me and my co-host Alexandra Bohannon, and we're really excited to be kind of partnering with you guys and finally kind of sharing and hopefully doing some more crossovers with you soon too. So
yeah, so thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about this year in movies.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Vinton, what should I read?
Comics.
Yes.
You dummy.
You're dumb.
I definitely recommend the Darth Vader series by Kieron Gillen. It's fantastic, especially if you love Star Wars. This is a great place to get that just a little bit more in between movies that you desire when you're waiting for those other movies. Also, not comic book related, watch Star Wars Rebels. It's like Firefly in the Star Wars universe. It's fantastic.
Awesome.
You should watch it.
What if Kieron Gillen and Karen Gillen wrote a comic together?
I always get those names mixed up because they're
hard.
in like...
I probably don't even say either of them right. I also recommend that if you're not reading Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, now is the time to start. Corey, what do you recommend that I read?
If you haven't read it yet, I really want you to read Spider-Woman.
Okay, I'll do it. Where do I start?
I think you can really start anywhere, but they've rebooted it either 2 or 3 times now, with the Secret Wars and all that business. But so you can read post Secret Wars or you can read pre Secret Wars, and either way, you're gonna really enjoy it. Oh, and then there's a Spider-Women storyline that is where Silk, Spider-Gwen, and Spider-Woman team up together, and that was a fantastic.
Aside from
story.
not having caught up with Saga, my biggest disappointment of 2016 was not reading any Silk or Spider-Gwen
I know,
whatsoever.
I
They're
didn't
both-
either.
But I read
such good
Spider-Verse,
titles.
fell in love with both of them, and then never read anything else of theirs.
We're only
too bad.
human. We have to sleep and eat and work and all those things.
Scout, what should we read this week?
I loved Supergirl so much that I took to Facebook, where I never talk about comics because none of those people really know truly how deep my comic love goes, I feel like. But I'm so excited about it. And even for people who don't typically read comics, it's just a 4-book miniseries. They're $5 a pop. It's not a huge time commitment or money commitment. And I feel like it's something that everyone could enjoy. So I really want people to read it for sure. And we haven't talked about it at all. That's the end of my recommendations. But we were texting each other and saying maybe we should mention Carrie Fisher, especially since she read so many Star Wars comics. And also her sweet mom, Debbie Reynolds. I
Yeah.
feel like Debbie Reynolds I have loved her. Corey and I both grew up watching Hollywood musicals.
Old movies and musicals. Yeah.
Unsinkable Molly Brown has been one of my favorite movies since I was a little girl. And people don't know much about Debbie Reynolds. This woman was holding AIDS benefits and raising AIDS awareness in the early 80s before anyone was even admitting it was a problem. She was incredible, as well as her daughter, which, obviously she was raised well.
I'm definitely going to be reading some of Carrie Fisher's books this coming year. I've heard they're amazing. She just released a new one I've heard is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
That's on my to-read list now, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't want to live in a world where Princess Leia doesn't exist anymore.
I feel like she left us with such a legacy, and I read so many stories about her, people meeting her right after she passed, but my favorite one, and I want to read it just because I feel like it's a good attitude to go into a new year with. But this was a Tumblr user, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it. So it's just Tumblr user. It's spelled INYRI. And it says, a story about the time I met Carrie Fisher. I know I told this sort of in August at the time that it happened, but I've been thinking a lot about it today. I was working at Wizard World Chicago in August 2016, so I had some extra money to spend as I was on an exhibitor pass. I couldn't pass up a Carrie Fisher autograph, so I bought a ticket, but I waited too long and ended up in Group B on Saturday afternoon. Group B was supposed to start at 4. I got in line at 4:30 and waited and waited and waited. The convention floor closed at 7. I waited. She had been signing autographs more or less since 10 a.m. We could see Gary, which I think everyone knows is her little puppy, her dog next to her, his tongue sticking out. I got to the front of the line at around 8 o'clock at night. I was tired. I've been working the booth all day, and perpetual cheerfulness is exhausting. I can only imagine how tired she must have been. No personalization, said the assistant as I handed her the book I'd brought to have signed, which I understood. I was at the front of Group B, and there were easily at least another 50 people behind me. A minute later, I was standing in front of Carrie Fisher. I'm pretty sure, being a creature of vast social awkwardness, I made a stupid joke about being on the wrong side. I was wearing my Imperial officer uniform. She looked up at me, opened the book, and said, "They're trying to stymie me. I will not be stymied." Who would you like this made out to? I will not be stymied. A life in 5 words, and all I can say is that I'm so, so glad I stayed in line. So that's my theme for 2017. Don't be stymied.
Yeah. I think I posted something along this lines when I heard that she passed, which was, in honor of Carrie Fisher, let's fight the Empire that much more. Let's push back darkness that much more this year in her name, that much more. I hope that you were already doing so, but that much more now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with the next 4 years that are coming like an impending doom, we need it more than ever.
That being said, as we come to a close, we have a bit of announcement. We have decided to try to make this podcast weekly. We love talking about comic books, and we love to talk about them more frequently and more currently as we read them, because every 2 weeks we're just obviously trying to ramble off as many comics and get as much talking in as we can about them. But doing that is difficult. There are obviously time restraints. There's gas money driving back and forth. I don't live that close to Cory and Scout, and connecting isn't always easy. So one of the things we decided to do is, while we're trying to plan this, is we're going to set a Patreon goal. We haven't decided on the amount yet, so I'm going to get to that. But check out our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/Graphocast, patreon.com/GRAPHOCAST. We're going to be setting a goal of some sort. And once we reach that goal, financial goal, we will be starting to do this podcast weekly, is the plan, at least so far. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. Check out our Patreon. You'll also get exclusive goodies for doing that, secret episodes that we do and special things that we upload. And I'm hoping to do a lot more of those this year and be a lot more focused on that. We just started it as kind of an experiment this year, and I just kind of dived into it. So now I know how to use it. Hopefully we can do some more with it. So be looking out for that. If you can, kick us $1 or $2 or more, and hopefully we'll be able to do this thing more often.
Yeah, I feel like it's always a rush to, and as many titles as I read, I feel like I usually try to just pick the 3 or 4 I like the most, but there's always so many more on my list. So I think weekly would be a great way to stay more current, like you said.
And even in the weeks where we can't read as much, we can dive a little deeper.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. I just think it would make it a better podcast and make it more informational for you, the listener.
And this might mean that we might not have segments every time, or we might just have one segment more often, but we'll be able to talk about the current issues and have more host things where we talk. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll get enough segments where we always have plenty of segments for each show, and that might not be true. We'll see. But until next time, you can get into contact with us. contact@graphocast.com, on Twitter @graphocast, on Instagram @ReadBraveComics. Personally, I'm on Twitter @FleshEater.
I'm at LortapMood.
At Scout Casto.
From the Graphomania Podcast Network, I'm Vinton Bain.
I'm Cory Casto.
And I'm Scout Casto.
May the Force be with you in 2017. This has been a Graphomania production. If you would like to hear more podcasts, go to graphocast.com, graphocast.com. Follow us on Twitter @Graphocast and like the Graphomania page on Facebook for news and updates.